What if the reason 90% of people fail has nothing to do with luck, timing, or talent? Think about that. Most people believe failure happens because of circumstances outside their control. But what if it works the other way? What if failure isn't something that happens to you, but something you walk into with your eyes closed? Because circumstances don't automatically make a person fail. Bad luck doesn't automatically destroy a plan, and difficulty certainly doesn't automatically mean defeat. You can give someone a perfect opportunity, and they can still ruin it. You can give someone all the resources they need, and they can still come up empty. You can hand someone a clear path, and they can still wander off it. Why? Because opportunity can appear without the person being ready for it. Real success begins when you become ready. The 90% who fail aren't lacking chances. They are lacking strategy. Failure isn't about pretending you tried your best. It isn't about blaming the market, the timing, or the competition. It is about missing the fundamentals before the results ever had a chance to show up. A person who succeeds thinks differently before they ever see a result. They value preparation. They study the game before they play it. They build systems instead of relying on willpower. They learn from people ahead of them. They take responsibility when things go wrong. They don't ask only, why isn't this working? They ask, what am I missing? That question can change everything. Because when you find what you're missing, you close the gap. When you close the gap, you make sharper decisions. When you make sharper decisions, your results begin to shift. So don't wait until you've failed 5 times to start asking what the 10% are doing differently. Start now, before you take the next step, before you spend the next dollar, before you make the next move. Because success is not only something you stumble into, it is something you must build the strategy to deserve. And today we're going to explore why so many people fail at the exact same point, and the 3 strategies you need today to make sure you are never one of them. Now, think about this. Before you ever change your results, you have to change your approach. Because success doesn't begin with effort alone. It begins with strategy. Most people think, if I just work harder, I'll get there. If I just try longer, it'll pay off. If I just want it enough, it'll happen. But what if you have it backwards? What if the strategy must come before the effort means anything? Think about it. If you give someone unlimited effort but no direction, what happens? They exhaust themselves in circles. If you give someone endless motivation but no plan, what happens? They burn bright and burn out. Effort without strategy is just movement, not progress. That's why 90% fail. Not from lack of trying, but from trying without a map. Now listen carefully. The first strategy is this. Know exactly what game you're playing before you play it. Most people fail because they walk into something complex, assuming it works, like something simple. They guess. They copy what worked for someone else without understanding why it worked. They skip the research because research feels slower than action. But action without understanding is just expensive guessing. So before you commit your time, your money, your energy, ask yourself, do I actually understand the rules here? Do I know what separates the people who win from the people who lose in this exact space? If you can't answer that clearly, you're not ready to compete yet. You're ready to learn. And there's no shame in that. The shame is in skipping it. Now think bigger. Instead of asking, how can I start fast? Ask, how can I start correctly? That question is powerful because correct starts compound. Fast starts collapse. People who succeed study the terrain first. They understand the risks. They understand the timeline. They understand what patience is actually required before results even begin to show. So don't rush past the learning phase to feel productive. Slow down long enough to actually understand what you are stepping into. Now understand something. The second strategy is systems over emotions. It asks, what will I do when I don't feel like doing it? Not only, what will I do when I'm inspired? That's the difference. Someone without a system sees a hard day and quits. Someone with a system sees a hard day and follows the plan anyway. A person relying only on motivation asks, do I feel like showing up today? A person relying on systems asks, what does today's process require, regardless of how I feel? That shift can change your entire trajectory. Now start practicing it. Before you rely on motivation, build a system. Before you count on inspiration, build a routine. And ask yourself, if my motivation disappeared tomorrow, would I still keep going? If the answer is no, your foundation is too fragile. Build something that doesn't depend on your mood, because mood is the least reliable thing you own. You don't need to feel ready to follow a system. You need discipline to trust the process even on the days it feels pointless. Learn to follow through on one small commitment before you expect to follow through on a massive goal. Small consistency prepares you for bigger consistency. So start where you are. Understand the game. Build the system. Protect your consistency. Learn continuously. And stop waiting to feel ready before you commit to the process. Commit first. Because the goal isn't simply to try. The goal is to prepare properly. To build something repeatable. Something dependable. Something that survives your worst days. And when you build that, you don't just attempt success. You engineer it. Now think about this. Trying hard is common. Trying smart is rare. You can work long hours and still go nowhere. You can hustle every single day and still have nothing to show for it. Because success is not only about how much effort you pour in, it is also about where that effort goes, how it compounds, and whether it's aimed at the right target. Now listen carefully. If you want to be in the 10%, stop treating every action like it automatically counts. Treat your effort like a resource. Every hour has a purpose. Some builds skill. Some builds relationships. Some builds momentum. Some can be wasted chasing the wrong metric entirely. But if every hour disappears without a clear purpose, you are not building progress. Busyness is managing you. Now ask yourself, where does your effort actually go? Not where you think it goes. Where does it really go? Look at your week. Look at the meetings that lead nowhere, the tasks that feel productive but change nothing, the distractions disguised as research, the planning that never turns into action. Because failure is not always caused by one giant mistake. Sometimes it's caused by small misdirected efforts repeated for months. Now here is the third strategy, and it might be the most overlooked one. Learn faster than you fail. Most people repeat the same mistake in slightly different packaging and call it a new attempt. They don't study their failures, so they don't extract the lesson, so they pay the same tuition twice. A person who succeeds treats every setback like data. What exactly went wrong? Was it timing? Was it execution? Was it the plan itself? They adjust, then they move again. That is a different mindset entirely. Now ask yourself, am I actually learning from what isn't working? Or am I just repeating it with more enthusiasm? That last question can save you years, because repeating an unexamined mistake feels like effort, but it's actually just delay. Real progress doesn't need constant reinvention. You don't have to start completely over every time something breaks. Sometimes growth looks ordinary. You adjust one variable. You track what changed. You keep the parts that worked. You cut the parts that didn't. Nobody applauds the adjustment, but your trajectory bends because of it. Now understand this. Succeeding doesn't mean never failing. It means failing on purpose, in controlled ways, extracting the lesson quickly, and refusing to pay for the same mistake twice. Let setbacks teach you something instead of just discouraging you. Learn the difference between a setback and a signal, between something to abandon and something to adjust, between what feels bad today and what teaches you the most. That is strategy. Now think about preparation. Don't wait to see what results show up at the end of the year. Decide what outcome you're building toward before you begin moving. Pay attention to your inputs. Build a base of skill before you chase scale. Create margin for mistakes, because when you have margin, small failures become lessons instead of disasters. Now listen, when you get an early win, don't assume the strategy is finished. Don't turn one success into overconfidence. Let that win teach you what worked so you can repeat it deliberately. Study it, refine it, because if you win once and then stop analyzing, you may never understand why it worked, and you won't be able to do it again on command. Now here's another important lesson. Don't confuse activity with progress. A packed calendar can look impressive. Long hours can look impressive. Constant motion can look impressive. But impressive doesn't automatically mean effective. Progress is measured by results that compound, not hours that accumulate. So focus on leverage, not just labor. Focus on the right skill. Focus on the right relationships. Focus on the strategies that scale. And always study the people already succeeding before assuming you know a faster way. Now think about your effort as an investment. You put in work, but eventually you want that work to generate returns beyond the hour you spent. That takes patience, feedback, adjustment, and time. Don't chase overnight wins. Build steadily, test consistently, make thoughtful pivots, because real success is usually built through iteration. One smart correction after another. So treat your strategy like it matters, because it does. Know your game. Know your system. Learn with purpose. Execute with intention. Increase your skill. And think several moves ahead. You don't need to be exceptional to join the 10%. You need the discipline to actually apply what the 90% only talk about. Now think about this. Your outcome is not created by one big attempt. It is created by the things you refine repeatedly. Your habits, the way you study your results, the way you use feedback, the way you handle setbacks, the way you respond to obstacles, the way you keep going when nobody's watching. That is where the gap closes. Now listen carefully. You don't need perfect conditions to start applying these strategies. You can start today with what you have, because strategy doesn't require luck. It requires attention. Start with clarity. A person who wants uncommon results cannot keep taking the common, unexamined path. Your attention is valuable, maybe more valuable than effort, because effort can be repeated. Wasted years cannot. So, protect your focus, plan your approach, know what actually matters, and study before you sprint. Now think about learning. People who beat the odds keep refining themselves. They don't say, I already know how this works. They stay curious. They study failures, including their own. They ask better questions. They learn from people who already solved the exact problem in front of them. Because the moment you stop examining your approach, you begin repeating your mistakes. So create a review habit. Study your results every week. Study your field. Learn from your setbacks directly. Take notes, then adjust. Knowledge only becomes strategy when it becomes correction. Now let's talk about consistency. You cannot beat a 90% failure rate with inconsistent effort. You have to learn to follow the process, whether it feels exciting or not. That doesn't mean you never adapt. It means adaptation is intentional. Execution is intentional. Your decisions are intentional. You stop letting your mood decide whether the plan gets followed today. Now build the habit of finishing what you test. This is simple but powerful. Run fewer experiments, but see them through. Every completed test builds real data, and real data builds real strategy. Now build the habit of thinking several steps ahead. Before making a move, ask yourself, what will this teach me if it fails, and what will it build if it works? That question changes your perspective. One skipped lesson may not seem important. One ignored mistake may not seem important. One unexamined result may not seem important. But repeated blind spots become patterns. Your outcome is often the accumulated result of unexamined decisions. So make your reviews work in your favor. Now build the habit of owning your results. Don't blame the algorithm. Don't blame the competition. Don't blame bad timing. Look at what you can control. Your research, your system, your consistency, your adjustments, your response. Ownership gives you power, because when you take responsibility, you can take corrective action. Now, build the habit of surrounding yourself with people solving harder problems than you. The people around you can influence your standards for what's actually possible. You don't need to copy their exact path, but you should be around people who remind you that the 10% is reachable. Now remember, the strategies that separate the 10% are not about talent, they are about approach. Understand the game, build the system, learn faster than you fail, protect your focus, develop your skill, track your effort, keep your experiments honest, learn every week, finish what you test, take ownership, stay consistent, and keep refining. You don't need to master all three strategies tomorrow. Choose one today, apply it, make it consistent, then add the next. Because small corrections repeated for months can create enormous separation. The goal isn't to look like you're succeeding. The goal is to become someone who actually understands why success happens. So start now. Build the strategies your future results will require. Because before you ever join the 10%, you must first stop making the mistakes that keep the 90% exactly where they are. Now think about this. Beat the odds. Not by working harder than everyone else blindly. Not by copying strategies you don't understand. Not by hoping motivation carries you the whole way. Beat the odds by applying strategy that can create real, repeatable results. Because success is not built by intensity alone. It is built through understanding, through systems, through consistent correction made over a long period of time. Now listen carefully. Most people want the outcome, but they don't want the analysis. They want the win, but they don't want to study the loss. They want to be in the 10%, but they don't want to do what the 10% actually do differently. You have to change that. If you want uncommon results, you must become comfortable with uncommon discipline. Study, test, adjust, learn, repeat. It may not feel exciting, but that's the point. Real strategy is often quiet. Now, think about patience. A strategy doesn't prove itself because you keep restarting it. It proves itself because you refine it long enough to see it through. Your path to the 10% works the same way. You make one sharper decision today and another tomorrow. You study consistently. You test your assumptions. You adjust your approach. You make thoughtful corrections. Then you give the process time to compound. Don't abandon your strategy because you want proof immediately. Impatience creates the very failure you're trying to avoid. Now ask yourself, am I making decisions to feel busy or to actually close the gap? That question matters because sometimes the smartest move is the one that gives you less activity today but more clarity tomorrow. Maybe you don't start the 10th project. Maybe you finish the one you already have. Maybe you study instead of scrolling for another shortcut. Maybe you build one real skill instead of chasing another trend. These decisions may not look impressive, but they build something much more important: competence. Now, understand this. Beat the odds. Think before you launch. Think before you quit. Think before you copy someone else's plan without understanding it. Ask yourself, does this move actually close the gap between me and the result I want? If it does, do more of it. If it doesn't, have the courage to change it. That is strategy. Strategy means knowing what actually matters and refusing to confuse motion with progress. Now, think about discipline. Discipline isn't about grinding harder. Discipline is about staying aligned with a plan that works, even when a shinier plan tempts you. It says, I understand why this works, so I will trust it long enough to see it through. That is powerful, because without that trust, your strategy remains dependent on quick results, and quick results are rare. Some weeks feel promising, some don't, but your approach can remain sound. That is why you build feedback loops, create review routines, and track the right numbers instead of the comfortable ones. Plan your experiments, schedule your reviews, protect your learning hours, and make the smart move easier to repeat. Now remember, you don't need to be flawless. You need to be correctable. One sharp month may not change your trajectory, but 12 months of honest correction can change your direction entirely. 2 years can change your results. 5 years can put you somewhere the 90% never reach. That is the power of strategy combined with patience. So don't chase shortcuts. Don't compare your learning curve to someone else's highlight reel. Don't get discouraged because your progress feels invisible right now. Keep testing, keep studying, keep refining, keep showing up. Because while others are looking for a hack, you can be building actual understanding. And understanding is rarely flashy, but it is what survives. So beat the odds, not with more noise, but with sharper decisions. Be patient, be strategic, be intentional, protect your focus, study your failures, increase your skill, think several moves ahead, and keep refining even when nobody notices. Because the real goal is not to look like you're winning. The goal is to become the kind of person who understands exactly why winning happens and can repeat it on purpose. Learn the 3 strategies today. Understand the game. Build the system. Learn faster than you fail. And let your results eventually prove who you became.